So what I really want you to think about here, this is going to seem simple on the surface, but people make quite a few mistakes when they're doing these questions. So what we're looking at is we're looking at this first one is f of 4. So the way we read that is f of 4. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to circle that like I did there, and I want you to recognize that x equals something. We're actually telling you what x equals. This f of 4 communicates information. It tells you that the x value is 4. So when you are evaluating a function and it says find f of 4, really what they're saying is they're saying plug in 4, right? You're going to plug in 4. So it actually works out super quick and super easy. If we're going to plug in 4, then it's just going to be 3 times something minus 2, and we're plugging in 4, right? So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 2 is 10. And that's your answer. F of 4 equals 10. So you'll notice, just like lots of different things, if you put something into a machine, you get something out of that machine. And that's what just happened there, is that when we plugged in 4, it kicked something back out, and it kicked out 10. So that's what it means to evaluate a function. Example 2 basically has us looking at a new function. And you'll notice that all we did was change the letter. Instead of it being f, we're now calling it g. So f is the most common one because that stands for function. But we use g, we use h. You really can use any letter you want, except for x, except for y, things like that. Most of them we're using are letters we wouldn't use otherwise. So for this one, g of negative 1, again, it's telling you what does x equal. X actually is negative 1. And so that's saying, hey, plug negative 1 in 4x. So exactly what it says there is what we need to do. Now, I'm going to show you the mistake that people often make. The mistake that people make is they kind of try to use this part. And they think, well, they go, oh, negative 1 equals 2x squared plus 4. That is completely wrong. That is completely wrong. We do not actually have an equal sign at all. You'll see from the previous example that I didn't write an equal sign at all. That we just wrote down 3, make that disappear, 3 right here times 4 minus 2. There's no equal sign. It's not an equation. You're plugging into that expression and seeing what you get out. So if I'm going to find g of negative 1, then essentially it's 2 times something squared plus 4. And you see the process that I'm using here is I like to draw parentheses where the x used to be and then plug in the value. So I'm going to plug that in. Now you got to be really careful not to mess up your order of operations here. Order of operation tells us to take care of exponents first. So we're going to do negative 1 squared, which actually happens to make it a positive 1. Now we can multiply positive 1 times 2 plus 4. That ends up giving us 6. So our answer there is 6. And now last but not least, this question here at the bottom has us bring it all together. It says, hey, what is f of 4 minus g of negative 1? So we already know what those are. We found f of 4 already. It was 10. We found g of negative 1 already. It was 6. So what is it asking us to do? It's asking us to subtract them. So that's actually more often than not what you're going to see. They're going to give you an expression that says f of 4 minus g of negative 1. What does that equal? You bring those together and you're left with 4. That's your actual answer there when we use the f of 4 and the g of negative 1 from those two previous examples. Now recognize that we could have asked you example 3 right from the very beginning. So you might have to, you wouldn't necessarily always have it staged like this, where it says f of 4, get the answer, g of negative 1, get the answer, and then subtract. You might have to do that work all in one question. So hopefully that's starting to make some sense when it comes to actually evaluating the function itself. We'll keep working.